The Nicola Bully case, what happened 3.5 years ago, everybody had their speculations about the murder of Nicola Bully, what actually happened, because it was quite covered up very quickly. It was kind of like, you know, it happened, then covered up. Everybody had their speculations of the Nicola Bully case. So what I'm doing a video today on it. And by the way, I am a psychic. And I'm not fully there, but there's different levels of being a psychic. I do sense, the dead. I get the premonitions of the dead, the dreams. I do sense them, and it's just like kind of like the feelings I get. Now, this case has really brought my attention because I am getting some kind of like feelings from this case, and I wanted to share with everybody what I've been doing. So I'm going to go into it, and I'm going to tell you what I think and what I think possibly could happen with the case with Nicola Bully. The morning of the disappearance of Nicola Bully had a conference call with her company she works for. So she sat down on a bench after, dropping the children off to school, taking the dog for a walk. So she sat down because she had a conference call. We don't know how long she had the conference call for, but she had a bit of a conference call. So bearing in mind, with conference calls with companies, they do take a while. So this is what really, really gets me. We're going to kind of like dig into this now. Now, Nicola was doing the conference call, and she the dog was actually by her, probably like jumping around, playing around. And then she put the phone on hold, and that's all we know next. Now, a while later, a passer come by and seen her phone on the bench, but the dog was like kind of like still, and her phone was on hold. So what kind of wonders me is, who did Nicola, if she was to put her phone on hold, who did she attend to? Because if you were to put your phone on hold or anything, you tend to attend to things, don't you? And that's what really gets me, because the dog was actually still. So did the dog, know the person who was actually, who Nicola attended to? Because the dog was actually still just sitting there. So that means if the dog didn't know who the person was, for the dog actually, to protect off their owner, the dog would have started barking and probably tried to come for the person. But no, the dog was actually still, which was actually quite suspicious, really. So, they used their phone, they ran around and everything to know where she had gone to, but she just completely disappeared into thin air. It's like she completely went. And that's what really gets me, because the answer lies with the dog. If the dog was to be still, and Nicola attended to someone, what actually did happen? What really did happen on that day? So they always got to me. My feeling is, I'm going to go straight into it now. I think somebody knew Nikki and her partner, Paul Ansell, very well. The dog was very, very familiar with, actually very comfortable with the person who knew Nicola Bully and Paul Ansell, her partner. And what I feel, that person, had dealings with Nicola's disappearance and Nicola's death. But this dog knew who the person was. So this is what is really, really getting me. Okay, because the answer lies with the dog. So, it's quite of a strange one, really, because she wasn't found for 3 weeks later. She was buried very, very quickly. Never really heard the case no more, but it is a really bloody strange one. So I think, me personally, what I'm getting, like the kind of like the feelings, the spiritual awareness of this case, that it lies with the dog. The person knew Nicola Bully and Paul Ansell very, very, very well. and it lies with the dog. So that person is still out there. But I think the person who was responsible for all of this actually knew, was actually high up in a job. That's what's coming over at the moment. This person was very high up in the job. I don't know, but very high up in the job. And this is why the case was kind of like, you know, kind of like dug under the carpet, really. So that's what I'm getting, guys. So that's what I'm getting, the Nicola Bully case. So, you know, I will come up with some more stuff if I get any more, you know, those spiritual feelings. But it's definitely a strange one.